Well, how are we doing on people? Feel like we need some elevator music or something there, Sandy.
I know we should have something going on.
Maybe you guys need to come up with a COG theme song.
You know, I used to be a DJ. I was a radio and club DJ for many years. Maybe I could do a DJ party for the intro.
I feel like another committee has just been formed, right?
Yep.
Party planning committee.
Theme song, COG theme song. I think
COG
it's
theme song, COG anthem, right? Something.
well, and it should be something along to the tune of the Brady Bunch, since we all have our little squares. We
I
can all
think
do.
so. Yeah. Okay, you work on that.
Do we need to do that as part of the Pledge of Allegiance?
Oh, Kelly, save us here. All right, so I guess we're gonna get started. Yes, Patty's coming up. Patty's just joined the party planning committee, it looks like. She's got songs in mind. So some housekeeping, be sure you're on mute if you're not talking so that we don't hear your dogs barking and whatnot. I hope everybody can see the raise hand function. If you can't, just like literally raise your hand and I'll call on you. We'll do it that way. Kelly, do we have the agenda? Or I don't know what's next on there. There we go. Okay. So how about, do you want to do roll call, Kelly? And when we do roll call, if people could give an update as to what's going on in their community, news, questions, exciting events, things they wish were happening, whatever. So take it away, Kelly. I think you've got the list. Oh, look at there.
Okay. Brad.
I'm here and I'm not aware of anything significant new in the Lansing area. Although I'm sure there is, but I'm just not aware of it.
Thank you. Charlie.
I don't know if Charlie's here or if he's on vacation.
Christina. Connie?
Can you hear me, Kelly? Because I always have trouble with my audio.
I sure can, Connie. Thank you.
Oh, that's the first time in a long time. Okay, things that are going on. Teresa Landrum and I are co-chairing an event in Southwest Detroit on PFAS, and it's going to star Tony Spaniola and Sandy Winstone. They're going to be talking about PFAS to an affected community in Southwest Detroit, where they're next to two big PFAS sites, Marathon and the Rouge Manufacturing Complex. Second thing is, today I gave a presentation on PFAS to the Health and Human Services Department of Wayne County. So that was a fun, exciting time. I've been on for about 20 minutes. It was pretty productive. That's all that's new here. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Daniel Brown.
I'm here. We have an event coming up October 13th. So it's Thursday at 7 p.m. focused on the hexavalent chromium spill and investigation. We're going to have Phil Argiroff from Eagle talking, and elected officials are going to be weighing in on what they see are the needs. And then we'll have folks from HRWC and the Ecology Center as well. I can provide the Zoom link to anybody that's interested on that. That's it for me.
Thank you. Daniel Burlingame. David Norwood. Dave Wynn,
I'm here.
Elizabeth, Gail Dugan, Gail Manswit, Jason,
I am here. Nothing real new. I do know the trial date for the SI Cassie plastics or the old Brighton thermofill can move back to December, but that's really the other highlight here, other than all the Drybar stuff that's still in the news.
thank you.
Kelly, there is a Gail on the phone or logged in as a guest, so I don't know if that's Gail Mansowitz or if it's somebody else. Okay, we can just keep going.
Jeffrey, Jeremy, Joe,
Yes, I'm here.
Justin, Pen, Laura, Leah, Lynn.
I am here. Take me out to the cog game. Take me out to. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I know. I was over here thinking, but I'm sorry. Yes, I'm here in Rockford upstairs. It just started raining, and tomorrow in Rockford, David LeGrand is coming to meet a few of us to talk about PFAS at the tannery. And Sandy has ordered some yellow slickers, right, Sandy, for all of us, and matching umbrellas. Yep. Okay. That's one thing happening in Rockford, and I will pipe down.
Thank you, Lynn. Margaret. Mary,
Mary Blanchard is on. I see her.
Hello, I'm here.
thank you. Matthew, Mike,
Yes, Mike Borman, I'm here.
thank you. Pam, Patty,
Hi there. Quick update on Cascade Township. We are getting city water, just not this year. The water main is not going to be put in this year. But those who currently live on the existing water main will be connected up until they can't dig anymore. So that's our update for Cascade Township. Thank you.
thank you, Patty. Richard Burns,
Yes, hi, I'm here. Not much to report from Livingston County. I am invited to speak about biosolids to the Solid Waste Association of North America, Michigan chapter at the end of this month. I'm going to contact Abby's group or MPART for some help and some slides, Abby. So.
Sounds good.
thank you, Richard. Rick,
Yeah, there's not much happening with the sites in Ottawa County, but I did want to bring up that Chemours in, I guess, North Carolina, they've decided to, at Cape Fear, they've put in a request to expand their air permits. So they're actually going to be expanding to produce more PFAS compounds. And it turns out that semiconductors use fluorinated surfactants, so all the chip plants are going to be using those kinds of materials. And then the lithium-ion batteries also have fluoropolymers inside the batteries themselves. It helps to do the conductance of the electrons with the lithium. So I think we just have to keep our eyes out for especially when we've got, like, there's a big battery plant that's being built in Holland that they do consider the waste disposal, and we go in there eyes wide open that they're, even though they call them fluoropolymers now, they are PFAS related compounds. So I don't know what the toxicity is, and nobody knows what the toxicity is on those materials. So we have all these fluorinated materials that are going to be used for battery and for all the green energy products. So we just have to be cognizant of that.
Thank you, Rick. Bob. Sandy.
I am here. Not much going on here in Belmont. I think next week we get to hear the final plan for the House Street dump and the capping of 30 acres. And as Lynn said, we're all meeting with David LeGrand next week, or a group of us are, to walk in Rockford. So that's all I got going on. Lynn, I see your hand up. We'll do that after we do intros.
Shalene. Stacy. Oh,
We're
we
not-
can't hear you,
Stacy,
Stacy.
you're on mute somehow.
Oh, now she's on mute.
See if we can
Wonder if
unmute.
don't have your audio on.
Yeah.
Nope. Might have to.
Oh, there, you're unmuted right now, Stacy. Try talking. No.
Nope. Nope. Might have
Yeah.
to rejoin.
You
Try
may
to
have to
go out and come back
Jump
in.
out and come back in, and then they'll have you click on something that says you'll do the audio.
Yeah.
Teresa.
Did I unmute? Hi, good evening, everybody. Sorry about that, trying to get my computer to unmute. Teresa Landrum from Southwest Detroit 48217. We have some upcoming PFAS workshops that we're planning for November. And we're going to have guests Sandy and Tony and hopefully Bill Barnett. And the second one will be scheduled for 2023. And I just wanted to bring something to the attention of the call. As I was trying to get on the internet, 6 o'clock news came on, and it said they have a PFAS problem in Warren's water, and that the over 250-page report was never given to the people to understand about the PFAS in the, I think it said Warren, the report said Warren. So I'm trying to find the story so that I can forward it out. Thank you.
All right, Stacy, we can hear you now.
You can hear my dog is what you can hear.
Yeah, we can hear your dog.
Maya, stop barking. So we have a lot of land use changes going on in our little community in Holly, right here on Valk Road. So they're clear cutting a forest, and the class 1 wells are not 2,000 feet from the contamination site of the Falk Road dump. So that's Clean Drinking Water Act 399, Part 812. So that's one of my biggest concerns. And we actually have a leaky confined aquifer. So it's susceptible to contamination. It is unprotected by a 7-foot clay barrier. There's a gentleman that just bought 5 acres behind my house, and his house, I was told that he was never going to be able to put a well in on that site. There's also a gentleman that bought 44 acres on the west side of the dump, and he was told he can't put in geothermic wells. And so there's a lot of land development in conjunction with our little 40-acre dump site with 35 wells on it. And most importantly to me anyways, right now test well 10, that was the one that was communicating with the other aquifer. Somehow last year that test well 10 and test well 34 were damaged and they are no longer viable.
Thank you, Stacy. Tony.
Yeah, I'm here, and it's good to see and hear everyone. Just a few updates from Oscoda and beyond. Our community was featured last week in the lead story in CQ Roll Call in Washington, D.C. We are on the brink of starting with DHHS. I'm not going to get the term right, health assessment or exposure assessment or something like that. The study that we've been asking for quite some time. And that's getting off the ground here in the coming weeks. We also are going to be meeting, our technical team and others of us will be meeting with officials from the Air Force at the Pentagon later this month to go over what we think are some pretty glaring deficiencies in some technical things that they've not been doing in our plans and models there. And beyond, in addition to the exciting event that's coming up in Southwest Detroit in November, Sandy, you didn't mention it, but Sandy and I are going to be on a panel next week in Milwaukee at the Great Lakes Healing Our Waters Conference. So lots going on.
Thank you, Tony. Tyler. Bill Barnett. And Bill Creel.
Yeah, I'm here. I don't have any updates at this time.
Thank you.
And I think I saw Gail jump on, or at least turn her camera on, Kelly, so I think she's here. Yep.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay, good. I'm here. I have nothing to report, but I am here.
And Lynn, you had your hand up for a minute and then you took it down.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I noticed that Gail was on. There was some question before, but Abby, beat me to it. So I'm just gonna pipe back down again.
Okay.
All right.
Looking out for each other. I like that.
I tell ya.
All right. I think I don't have the agenda in front of me. I have cool pictures in front of me. There we go. All right. Subcommittee reports. Engaging the public. I think that's Rick. Is that you?
Yes, we did meet briefly. There was only two members that were on the call, but I am going to have a meeting next Tuesday at 6:30 to discuss public notifications. So we're going to have a subcommittee meeting, and if anybody besides the engaging the public wants to attend, please let me know and I'll send you the Zoom link. It's also going to be posted on the MPART website.
All right. Good. Put that in your books, folks. The website review committee.
Yeah, this is Bill Creel. We did meet today and had an interesting discussion. The website seems to be doing pretty good in our opinion, except that the site updates, we think Eagle is struggling to keep up. They have somewhere on the order of around 230 sites now. And, it's it's important that we figure out how to help Eagle get the updates we want to see out there. So as a subcommittee, we're going to evaluate some options. put some things together for the COG to consider and then come back either next month or the month after with some options and have a discussion on which way we want to go with that. And that's it.
That's great. I love that idea. Shoot me an email when we want to put it on the agenda, because I think that's really good.
Okay, will do.
Preventative Measures Subcommittee.
Yeah, as of last month, I had asked for feedback on the community awareness information document from the COG. I did receive comments back. We put those in the file, made some changes to the document based on those comments. And just so that everybody's aware, I think Kelly, you were going to put it up there. We have, as of about a week ago, the document was finally released and put onto the MPART website under the Citizens Advisory Workgroup. You can see it right there. So if you click that introduction to PFAS 101 document on, the document will come up and it can be printed off.
Ooh.
So a lot of the information is great information. And Connie, you mentioned that you're having a meeting. Maybe there's a possibility that that information could be consorted out to some of the residents, and we could get feedback based on that information. But that document can be printed out.
And Dave, you did an incredible amount of work on that document. You and Kelly both, like,
Yep.
it's amazing.
I can't thank Kelly enough for her help and getting all this, getting some of the help to put a lot of this stuff together, the formatting and stuff like that, and some of the information websites. What I am going to do is in probably another week or so, I'm going to schedule a meeting with the subcommittee members to talk now relative to how the document's going to be updated, how often the document's going to be updated, who's going to update the document, and where do we go now from here? What's the next level that we want to achieve based off of having this document out there? But this document would be great if we could get out some sort of a beta site or some kind of a community that hasn't have a lot of documentation, and we get feedback on the pros, cons, benefits, things they don't like about it, or things they want added to it. That we'd like to get that feedback.
Yeah, so I think the idea was if we have a new site or a new community that we find out is impacted, if we could get this to them and get their feedback on it, I think that would be helpful in two ways. It would help that community, but it would also let us know if this was good information. So I guess I'm interested in that. I don't know if Warren's water is bad. I guess we got a few people that live there that we could test this out with, but thank you for doing all that. Take a look at it though. It's got some really amazing links and everything. And the links do work. We tested that about 7,000.
Everything does work.
7,000 times. So
thanks to Kelly. Kelly was very instrumental in helping out with that. So again, yeah. Kelly, I appreciate all your help on that.
Great.
No problem.
Membership committee.
Hello, this is Mary Blanchard. Daniel Brown and Joe King. We had met by email, and then we actually met in a virtual meeting as well. One of the things that was brought up in a previous meeting was the fact of members who are not attending or members who so one of the things that we had looked at was the actual COG charter. And when we were looking at that, there is actually no documentation in the charter regarding absences or missed meetings. It does state that members are expected to engage in the work group to the extent possible, and consistent with the following: actively participate in scheduled meetings, provide timely follow-up to action items such as submitting written comments on meeting materials. There's other things as well, but not particular to attendance. One of our concerns is that if a member for a site is not attending, then their site is not represented and their community is likely not being informed about that site either. Under the composition section of the charter, it states that MPART will appoint 2 members from an impacted community. With our current fewer members that are actually active and attending meetings, we are questioning whether there needs to be a limit on the number of members from a community with the current number, and also realize that with over 200 current sites that the number could become difficult in the future to manage. The membership team did review the participation and representation of our current membership, and we found many representation gaps in geographies, expertise, and perspectives. And several of those areas of the state that appear not to be represented or underrepresented include Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, and St. Clair counties, along with the greater Detroit area. We believe that the COG would benefit from having more professional affiliations, including with environmental organizations like watershed councils, land conservancies, clean water groups to support environmental protection would be really suited to the COG. Anybody who knows legal or scientific scientific expertise would be encouraged to reach out to those people to see if they would like to become a member of the COG, particularly people with scientific experience in hydrogeology, environmental toxicology, and chemistry. We would like members to help us to generate a list of organizations throughout the state that may be able to provide perspective or expertise to the COG. I did send this document out to the members, but it was later today around 3 o'clock. I'm going to turn it over now to Daniel and to Joe, and they're going to talk on a different section that we had discussed during our meeting.
Yeah, I can take it for a moment unless Joe wants to grab the reins. But during our conversation, we also discussed a number of things that might be affecting why COG members want to stay engaged, or things that might be able to compel them to stay engaged. We had a lot of thoughts about that. And we looked at the COG charter, and one of the things that we think is might be driving people away, or dissuading people is where do we go from here? What's sort of the point of action once we come up with a recommendation? And of course, the COG charter is clear that we are an advisory group. We don't have authority, but we can make recommendations. And go from there. We do recognize that on several occasions, through the surveys and through the discussions we've had over last many meetings, that a number of the COG members feel that in key ways the progress from state agencies has been slow, or that agencies have not been sufficiently responsive to various concerns. So that led us to thinking, like, what is the process for managing that and taking those concerns seriously. So in the circumstances where COG recommendations are not being accepted, or where they're not being translated into the action, the notification document and all the discussions we had around that, and sort of the time it was taking to advance that discussion. It's probably a good idea for us to establish basically a working set of expectations for COG and interactions with MPART, and what our role is as a COG under the charter. So we had basically a straw man starting point for basically when we decide to make a formal recommendation to the COG. So using the notification as an example, where we all get together, and now we have a voting procedure and we vote to make a formal recommendation and basically develop a memo or an open letter to MPART and state agencies. So we draft and we finalize that memo. The COG at some point votes on officially presenting the memo to the state. If the vote passes, the COG members and the state officials are encouraged to circulate the memo publicly within their communities, within their social networks. And then if sufficient action is still not taken at that point in a timely manner by the state, then at that point, then the COG would discuss options, clarify the position to MPART state agencies, encourage prompt action, and include basically a clear deadline for a response from state officials. That recommendation, which is basically the memo, could then be made public. We can't direct the private actions of its members. We're all wearing several hats based on our affiliations, but each of the COG members can pursue action unrelated to formal COG activities. So if that's participating in demonstrations or helping to write op-eds to various things. Once a deadline passes and the state officials have or have not responded, then at that point, COG members basically review the response. And then if we find the response is adequate, we go from there. And if we find the response is inadequate or absent, basically we just blow right through the deadline, or we don't find it sufficient, then the COG could basically vote to directly provide notification to the governor's office. And we would do that likely in a way where it's an open letter basically to the governor's office, get a response from the governor's office, and then follow the same basic protocol for basically going to the press or not. So stepping back for a second, it's basically at each point we just walk through, I think, sort of how you would expect this. So COG comes together, we realize that there's an issue that we want to make a recommendation on. We provide that to MPART. If that recommendation involves an action and we don't feel it's sufficient, we vote to basically set a deadline for a response. If there's no response, we basically discuss again, and maybe we decide to take it to the governor's office directly. And if the governor's office provides a sufficient response or not, that determines whether or not we go public and pursue actions outside of what we would consider the COG, but basically just write an op-ed to media outlets or provide a press release, something like that. So that that kind of gives us just this framework for what our role is and what the limits of our authority are and kind of what the expectations are. So on all of these different issues, whether we're talking about fish sampling or PFAS in soil or anything else that comes up, PFAS in batteries, who knows, that can provide just kind of a framework for expectations of how we kind of proceed. We evaluate. In some circumstances, we'll probably want to make a recommendation to MPART and the state agencies, and we go from there. Did I miss anything, Mary or Joe?
I was just going to say, actually, we're bringing this up just as a topic because we discussed it during our meeting. We certainly understand that we would have to bring this to the COG in general, either as an agenda item or that. And, you know, we'd love the opportunity to see what other people's opinions are too.
Lynn, you've got your hand up.
I do. I appreciate how well you articulated all of this, both Dan and Mary. Yeah, I think those are important points. I wonder sometimes, and again, maybe for future discussion, but if we reach a point like that, it seems to me that maybe it's time for just the COG members themselves, the citizens, to have a meeting and decide where to go from there, just because it's important to us to keep things moving. And we have spent a lot of time on the public notification. So I appreciate you bringing that topic up. I would like to talk about it more and figure out what's a protocol for doing that. We need deadlines so that we have points where we can mark progress and make that achievable. And also, I guess the other side of that, and I just say this as a fact, just for the agencies who are all on this call listening, there have been times that Michigan has, in speaking about the COG, have used that as something good. Look what we're doing. We're involving our citizens, and we're getting in an advisory role. But if that advisory role doesn't result in actions, somehow, where does that all go? So anyway, I like the way that you're just so straightforward, Dan. And I appreciate that. And Mary and Joe, thank you for your work.
Thanks, Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to put this on the agenda then for the next meeting to have more of a talk about kind of developing a policy or developing a procedure for how recommendations are made and followed through to the end?
Well, I guess the other thing we need to talk about, though, is our next scheduled meeting date would be election night.
Oh, you're jumping ahead on the agenda, Mary.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. You're right. We do. So, okay. Lynn, your hand is still up. Is that just because you're exercising or there we go. Okay. All right. So I'm making a note of that for a potential next meeting. Whenever that is. Thank you on that for the subcommittee, though. Lots of work there. I think that's all the subcommittee reports we had. So MPART, Abby, if you want to take it away now.
All right. A couple of things for everyone. We did have some questions that I thought I was going to bring up anyways, talking about our facilitator. We've paused that contract and, obviously haven't had a need for our facilitators. So at this point, I think unless somebody's got any better ideas, we'll probably go ahead and close out that contract. But I think that was, it's always great to be able to have that kind of accessibility. But I think we're moving ahead pretty nicely and things are rolling along. So unless anybody's got some thoughts on the facilitator themselves, I think that we'll, at this point, I don't see a real need for having the facilitator, that contract at least open at this point.
Anybody got thoughts or comments or concerns about that?
So I can, yeah, and if you don't want to speak up, we can certainly talk talk next, via email or whatever. Just shoot me an email. Other thing I wanted to bring up is Sandy participated in a event with the AG's office and Eagle. Was it last week, Sandy? I think it was last week. Maybe the week before, about what we in the Grand Rapids area call Keeler Brass. They had several different locations in the Grand Rapids, West Michigan area over the last 100+ years. FKI Hardware is the subsidiary company who purchased Keeler Brass. And so the AG's office has filed a complaint, and we're asking for action to be taken there's actually 6 or 8 different locations around West Michigan. There are 2 that have known PFAS concerns. The other ones still need to be evaluated, and so we've asked them to do that through a complaint. And so the AG did a little press conference, and Sandy spoke very eloquently, and I think kind of stole the show with the whole thing. So she did a great job, and very happy to have her there. I think this is a great example of you know, when the normal processes don't work, then this is an opportunity to file a complaint and try to do really implement the true polluter pay in the state. So we're going to continue to work through that with Eagle and staff and see where we get. So yeah, Gail.
Okay, there I am. Are they just ignoring the state altogether?
There were many issues, and I'm not as close into the litigation on that, so I don't have a full listing of all the issues. I do know there's some vapor intrusion issues as well as some PFAS issues, and you know they are no longer operating in the state. So
well, I knew they weren't operating in the state. I think they're in California, by what NPR said. But are they ignoring your even concerns? Are they giving, is it total silence, or is there any conversation going at all?
Well, you know, it's only been a week or 2 since the complaint was filed, and I haven't heard if they've responded yet.
But even before the complaint,
it's been a decade of work of back and forth. This has been a very long time.
Yeah, because Keeler's been out of business in the area for ages. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sandy.
Abby, my question was, are we concerned that there's contamination of drinking water or soil or things around it? Because those are a lot of sites, and some of those sites are in pretty, you know, or what I would consider environmental justice communities. And I just didn't know if there'd been notification to those people. If, you know, I'm worried about the vapor intrusion in some areas, or, and I realize you guys are doing what you can when you have a company stonewall you, but I'm still worried about how that could impact. 8 sites is a lot of sites spread out through this county.
Well, we know a good bit of information on at least 2 of them, but we don't have necessarily enough information on the rest. So the 2 that have been investigated somewhat have had the res wells evaluated. We know that we don't have, well, in most of the case, we're not having offsite issues, but staff are working very closely on those sites to make sure that residents aren't impacted. But it was, there's still additional delineation to be done. Both of those sites are in the bigger sites are in Grand Rapids, so we do have municipal water, but there is a lot more delineation to be done. So I don't want to say that it's not complete. Let's just put it that way. So, all right. I threw Falk Road on here because I know Connie and Stacy were talking about potentially doing some sort of a meeting with that to get an additional updates on Falk Road. So we did talk with the local project manager, but I wonder, at least on this particular site, if we should, I know they went out into the field last week or this week, and we're getting additional field work done. So it will take some time to get the data put together and get the reports and the maps all assembled. If we want to do a community meeting, once we get all that data, or, because it seems like if we need to talk about Falk Road, we should invite the whole community to participate and not just the COG. So, my thought was if we need a community meeting, let's do one that is actually involves the whole community. So Stacy or Connie, I'd welcome your input on that. Mary, go ahead.
I think we would welcome any meeting, but actually the meeting that we have been looking for years has been a meeting with all the agencies and all divisions of EGO, and between politicians and the agencies, that does not appear to be happening. And I mean, if the meeting you're discussing, we would be happy to attend and invite our community group and other residents as well. So.
Okay, so yeah, because obviously the PFAS part is this is the part that we can speak to. We can obviously invite, but we can't insist on other municipalities or agencies attending. So maybe we should talk offline about what else we would want to see in that kind of a meeting. So Stacy, what do you think?
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Yes. All right. And no dog barking. So
nice.
This isn't just PFAS, it's heavy metals. So I actually spent a few hours a couple days ago, like cross-referencing all of the issues our local residents, my neighbors, are dealing with, and heavy metals are as much a problem as PFAS. That being said, PFOS is at 250 parts per trillion going into the Shiawassee River, which is a designated national water trail. So it's 104 miles of impact into Saginaw Bay all the way to Lake Huron. Everybody that's between here and Holly and up there is also being affected. This has statewide impact. The aquifer is unprotected by a 7-foot clay barrier. They already said that test well 10 is of contamination concern. So, this isn't just a little deal, this is a big deal. And there's 100,000 people at risk per the guy, Oscar Boya, who used to be the inspector on this site and was with Oakland County Health Department. So this isn't something that should be easily dismissed. I actually got an email maybe today, from RRD, and they said that they can't do anything. That's not acceptable. And this group right here understands the impact of what can happen if we don't get this right. And right now, right here, we have a problem. And I and Mary have discussed this morning. I've talked to Sandy, I've talked to Connie, I've talked to a lot of people, but we have a huge issue going on right here in Holly. And because of the land development and adjacent property, it's 200 acres. That is a recharge station for the aquifer. It's the recharge station. It is the top of the Portland Moraine. It is a glacial outwash area. If you look at maps, data, y'all ask me for data. I have the data. I have it. And right now I'm asking and begging for communication with this group to help make sure that we do not mess up, because we do not have a backup water supply. That's all I got.
Let's let's maybe shift offline and talk about what we can honestly do, because RRD is doing investigation. So maybe we need to circle back with them as well. I'm not sure exactly what they were referring to when they told you they couldn't do anything, because they are spending money and they are out there investigating, and there should be some additional work done that we can use for delineation and characterization of the site.
Absolutely.
So, okay. All right. We will come back to that one then. All right. Mary, did you have more? Because your hand is still up.
Sorry.
Oh, no, that's all right. Okay. I see Lynn's hand go up.
Yes, just briefly. I go back to how hard it is to be when you're a citizen and you know these people and you know the impact to you. And it's not a time where it's much comfort to there's a point where I think I said this in my comment. I feel for Stacy and Mary and these people, because there's not a playbook for this kind of thing. And I guess I hope that we as a COG can be aware as this comes. I know we're not supposed to focus on one particular group, but any way that we can offer support and ideas, and any way that Eagle can really go to bat for this group of citizens, because it does make a difference. 10 years is a long time before a company is finally taken on by an attorney general. I know agencies, I know all these things take time, but I don't want to lose the heartbeat of what's going on in this community, and how we can help. So that's all. I just want to put that out there.
Thank you, Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
Gail?
I just wanted to add on with what Lynn said. From what I'm hearing described, that's a huge area. So that's not really just one group. That's a huge swath of our state. And so it would behoove us to get more involved with that. That's all I was going to say, just to tack onto that.
Thank you, Gail. All right, we will continue to explore that, and I'll talk with the site lead on that, and we will circle back with Stacy and Mary and figure out exactly what needs to be set up and when and where and how. So more work to be done.
So I want to just quick, Stacy and Lynn still have your hand up. I don't know if you're just left it up or if you want to have another question. I want to make sure we're not losing sight of this. So Stacy and Mary and whoever else is going to get with Abby offline and put your heads together on things. We'll try and do some other stuff between now and when the next meeting is as well. But I do agree that I know it's one community and this is statewide, not one, but I also think that much like we're saying with, the greater Detroit area and some other areas, sometimes I think the COG has to lend some of its muscle to some of these areas that need just some more support. So I will make sure we get an update at the next meeting as well. Mary, you still have your hand up.
Yep, I just wanted to ask Abby that when she does talk to Kim, that if you could clarify who she has already sent information to regarding all of this. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I will ask her. All right, to get through, continue on with my updates. There was a question about fish consumption advisories. So I've asked Marcus Vasilevich with DHHS to give us a quick update on that. That is really, fish consumption advisories is really in the realm of DHHS. So Marcus, you want to do a quick update on that?
I sure can, Abby. So I think a lot of you may know this. For those of you that don't, we've been in the process of looking into the current toxicity value that we are using for PFAS when it comes to calculating the fish consumption screening values. We've been in this process for several months. We're looking at old information that we've used prior, as well as new science that has come out since our old values were put in place years ago. I wish I could say we have a very specific timeline on this. Unfortunately, we don't have a firm timeline on when we will have these new values. I will say that it's most likely that we will see some sort of change to those consumption values. Our next step, the EPA did release their interim lifetime health advisory numbers, which included a PFAS toxicity that was much more toxic, a quite lower value. Those are interim lifetime health advisories right now. So we've looked at some of the science behind that. We're communicating with other states as far as their interpretation of that science. And the EPA's Science Advisory Board is also making comment on that. So once the EPA has some final values that it centers around, we'll use that in our incorporation of those screening values. So it's a lot of work that goes into trying to understand what the most appropriate values are. It's a long process, and we're taking all different aspects into account on that. So I will definitely keep this group updated when we finally center on specific values. And Abby, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted me to cover on, or if you wanted to add into that as well.
Yeah, just know that this is, updating the fish consumption thing is not something that we do lightly. This has, broad ramifications, and we want to be very, we want to have good, justifiable science to go with it. Make sure that it's sound and defensible, and so that's something that we will be, when DHHS gets to the point that they think they've got that science, we're going to take a very close look at it before we actually implement anything. So more to come on that, but we're still in the process of evaluating it. So I think, Daniel, you probably, I don't know if your hand was first, but.
I think Tony had his hand up before me, so I'll just yield for a moment.
No, go ahead, Dan. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know I was one of the people that was looking for an update to the fish consumption advisories, because the Huron River is affected, and we have river walkers out, talking to people about this since questions been coming up, particularly after the EPA health values. So I think you answered as good as we can say for now, and what sort of the first big part of that question is, are those EPA lifetime interim values being incorporated? It sounds like the answer is yes, so I'm happy to hear that. I certainly understand the wanting to be careful and diligent and thorough on this, because just looking at how much lower those EPA interim values are compared to what was being used before, it certainly could have pretty enormous implications across the state. So I appreciate that. I do wonder how much any information that can be shared about the methodology or the thinking at this point, I think would be welcome. We can talk about that offline, but I know several groups are interested in understanding, basically the state process. It sounds like it's not as simple as simply plugging in new numbers into an equation. So just understanding kind of where that's going, and how other studies across the state could potentially supplement or complement that, I think would be useful. So we can talk about that later. But
no, I was going to say, I can jump in there and say, I think I would welcome a more formal presentation when we do center at the numbers, to allow this group as well as other groups to understand how we reach those numbers. As we all know on this group, fish would not be the only exposure, and that's something that we have to take into account, is how much do we assume is coming from other sources. That in itself is a very tricky assumption to make, and that is part of the debate, is what do we use for that value. So like I said, it's not just plugging in a number and saying, even if we went with, and again, that EPA number is wrought with a lot of dissent, I think, because of some of the assumptions they make. So even if it was as simple as just plugging in a number, that still doesn't tell you what your exposure is, because you might have other sources of exposure, and that all has to be taken into account.
Thank you.
Tony.
Thanks, Cindy. And Marcus, thank you. The first part of my question was going to be similar to Dan's, and that's the process. I think it would help if there could be some kind of a presentation, so that there's some transparency into how this is being done, particularly for groups like this who can help other people understand what's going on behind the scenes. And I guess I just respecting the process, I guess I also just want to throw out there the concern that I'm hearing from people that I talk to, which is that other places around the country that are, that have taken action on this even before the EPA guidelines came out, the new lifetime health advisories came out. I know that Michigan's, I think, the do not eat level is 300 parts per billion for PFOS, And I know that I believe New Jersey is at something like 18, and that was even before the new LHAs were released in June. And so there's some concern that perhaps, and I guess I'll digress one more second. We were told in Oscoda that this process was being undertaken, I think, a couple of years ago. And so the time that has elapsed is causing concern, and from the standpoint of, it feels like people are eating fish when they shouldn't be. I know that's a very general term. I know that's a very complex process, but if you put together the big picture, pieces here, we have other states that have moved on more recent data that are quite a bit below the Michigan number. And it's like, how much longer do we have to wait until we're going to protect public health? And Marcus, I'm not saying that as a personal criticism. I'm just saying there's a concern that we need to act quickly. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tony. And to that point, we do evaluate other states. We look at how they came to their values as well, and take that as part of our consideration. So again, we don't turn a blind eye to other states and be like, well, that's New Jersey, or I think it's New Jersey you mentioned. We'll look at what studies they use, what source contribution they use, what kind of background they expect, and then see if that applies here in Michigan. So, but yeah, I appreciate that, Tony.
Thanks. And if you know what, if you could do a formal presentation to let us know how this process works, I think it would be really helpful.
Definitely can.
All right, Gail.
With this fish consumption, will it when all this information is gathered and you know what the level is that communicated to the public, and will they know what the risk, what the harm is?
So yes, we definitely will communicate it to the public. Our communication strategy, I don't know what that will be at this point as far as what our plan is, but it will definitely be a communication to the public. Something else, Gail, that you should also, or I should also mention on this, which is again one of those little nuances here, is if we come up with new values, would those be applicable to old data? Or is the data that we have for certain water bodies no longer applicable to new values? And that's something that's going to take a lot of consideration, right? I see, Dan, your thoughts on that is, it's a tricky, it's a tricky one to discern on how far back should we apply the new information from. And this could be one of those things where it's an awareness, where people see the data from water bodies, they see the new values. Again, sorry, now my dog's barking. That's just, that's part of the process, right? I love these nighttime meetings, right? The dogs are all riled.
And with that, what's the timeline for all this?
Like I said, our next step is waiting to see what the EPA comes out with. A lot of the states right now are holding tight with current values until we see what their science is going to show. So they said this fall. That's not far from now. So I'm hoping, I think, Abby, we heard end of November, hopefully, to have a final. I know, shaking our head, maybe. We're hoping it's going to be a course of a few months, not longer than that, Gail. We don't want to draw this thing out long.
No, not when it's this PFAS and everything. Thank you.
All right, Connie.
I don't think we're not hearing you, Connie.
Oh, okay.
That's
better. Wait, now we can.
Oh, okay. I'm just saying that the Health and Human Services Department should out of the box. EPA is come up with numbers that is of the entire country. But in our area, like Wayne County, where we have the environmental justice communities and Fishkin County, they're two populous counties. Look at them and take the ones in the environmental justice, because they're going to have a lot more fish that they catch and eat versus somebody else in maybe a more rural area. You try to reflect the
Hey, Connie, you're fading in and out so much. We're kind of getting every third word.
Okay, all right. I'll call in.
Or
Sandy.
type it in the chat if you can.
Okay.
Or call in. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll stand by for that. Stacy.
All right.
So
Now you're muted, Stacy.
how about now? Can you hear me now? Okay, cool. So, I've been doing this for 5 years, and I actually believe in this cog. I think that there's some very strong people on this group, but right now I see there's a lot of failures too, and I believe that we have a voice that's bigger than we're using right now. And it's frustrating to me that I see where errors are being made. I see where the legislation or the governor or I don't mean the governor, but the agencies or what have you is silenced because of whatever legislation, or there's so many reasons, and I'm not coming across right now perfectly, but I'm frustrated. And right now in Holly, we have a very, very, very big deal going on. And our senator fought this. Our congresswoman lauded Mary and I. I'm now a state rep. I'm running for state rep. I didn't want to be in that position, but I am doing that because that has to happen. If it's the old-fashioned way of running for representative, then so be it. But when I go to these meetings, there's a lot of people that aren't really informed. There's a lot of people that are amazed at this is ridiculous, that this should be solved, that the state should be stepping up, that the state should be protecting us. Our personal location here in Holly is Holly Township. They lost the ability to protect their water 30 years ago. They tried again in 2020. They spent $20,000 and they were responded with to our attorneys that there is no purview. The Water Resource Commission has no purview, nor does the health department. That's not acceptable. Right now, PFAS is not our only problem here. The river is as big of a problem as the water, and the aquifer is as big of a problem as any of it. And I sit here in front of you, as does Mary Blanchard, as does my sister-in-law, Denise Cantu, who she's also one of the places affected by this on Rice Lake and Bush Lake. And we know that the PFAS and the mercury are of concern for the fish. That got accomplished by the state. But we're like 5 years in here and we're still fighting this hard and we still haven't got any accomplishment to protect ourselves. I'm not happy. I'm actually a little disappointed. I'm very frustrated, and actually I'm angry. And anybody should not have to fight this hard. The state should have stepped up. I have sets of documents in front of me right now that are on my table. I'm going to a conference this weekend, and they're telling the people that they don't have ability either. And that's so ridiculous to me. Anyways, so that's my little rant. And I'm just telling you straight up that we are better than this. We are a very wonderful state. I've lived here for most of my life, and we have to get this right. That's all.
Thank you, Stacy. I completely agree. I know we're better than this. And you see, I don't know, 36 dedicated people who are sitting here. Real Housewives is on tonight. We could be watching that, but we're not. We're here on a Zoom meeting. So
absolutely,
that shows our level of dedication. All right. So thank you for talking about the fish consumption. I'm gonna put the process discussion on for a later meeting too, because I think that would be helpful for us to all hear how you come up with the big magic there. Because I do think there's a lot of communities that use that. I think what Connie was trying to say is, especially in those EJ communities, there's a lot of concern that you have sustenance fishing and people having no idea that they can be contaminating themselves from that. So I think that's important.
Yeah,
okay,
I think that's what I gathered. No, that's okay. I think that's what I gathered from Connie as well, and that is a big part of it. Is that those people that depend on that as their source of protein, and we are really trying to address that in those communities.
Okay.
Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Take it away, Abby.
Hi. There was a question about whether or not there was plans to update the Rule 57 values for PFAS in light of EPA's new lifetime health advisories. And so I think the same thing that we said on the fish consumptions is true for Rule 57. We're really waiting to see what EPA does, how they come out with these revised values. They've gotten their final report from the Science Advisory Board. And then I really kind of expected it by now to have EPA come out with some sort of a MCLG or some final considerations from the Science Advisory Board and how they're thinking about implementing this and putting it out for public noticing. So for proposed rulemaking on drinking water standards across the state. So we really want to take a good close look at that data to see what they're going to do. Rule 57 would, takes into consideration a number of things, but there may have to be some administrative changes to really do those updates. And so that's something, again, that we want to be very careful with. This is some very careful consideration, not only for the science, but the policies, the programs, the ramifications that go across the state. There's a lot of things to consider when we do these updates. And so we will be looking at that closely, but that is not something at this point that plans are being made for updating until we see the rest of the science that goes with it. So that's my question. That's my answer for that particular question. We'll continue to update you as we see what happens with EPA here this fall. I would expect by no later than Christmas to see something more solid from EPA, but I don't have any insider knowledge on that. Maybe Tony's got better insider knowledge than I do when it comes to EPA. So. All right.
Tony, are you still on here? Because I think that was your question from the last meeting.
Yeah, I am on, and I don't have any insider information. And
Okay.
Abby, I think at an appropriate time, it would also be helpful to understand that process, as well, along with the fish process.
Okay, and that is not something I'm terribly intimately familiar with, so I'll have to bring in the water resources staff to explain the Rule 57 stuff. So, because that's not a program I'm not familiar with. All right, thank you. Oh, Kevin, did you want to add something in?
Just real quick, no, I think that'd be fine. I think we could certainly present on the process. For those who don't know me, my name is Kevin Cox. I'm the unit supervisor for the water toxics unit within surface water assessment in Eagle. So yeah, certainly the Rule 57s are under our purview. I'd be happy to talk about that process, but as indicated earlier, we really are looking to see what the EPA does, and as noted by, and a lot of states are at this point, and we want to make sure any steps that we do take, we want to obviously have interdepartment communication with DHHS in terms of their decision-making process and come out with a unified approach in terms of what are the key health effects that are driving PFAS going forward for human health.
Yeah. And you'll remember Kevin from the last meeting, he came and did the surface water quality value updates for us last month. So thanks, Kevin. All right. And then there were some questions on public notification. And I just want to go back and remind and talk again about, we have committed, to the spirit of the public notification. We really have, that desire along with you guys to make sure our public is informed about PFAS sites, about the sources, make sure that we're minimizing any potential risk. And so we're continuing to get stuff put on the website. We're continuing to work with at the sites at the individual level, making sure that if as soon as we become aware of data, if there's anybody that's potentially at risk, that we're looking at those drinking water receptors first. Those are our first concerns, and those continue to be our first concerns. But we're also looking at, we're also working with our Department of Health and Human Services on a statewide education and information campaign across the state. And so there's a pretty expansive program that's going to be put out there to really inform everybody of not just PFAS concerns, but all residential drinking water well concerns. So this includes lead, this includes nitrates, arsenics, the heavy metals that Stacy talked about. There's a lot of other potential concerns as well. And so we're working with DHHS to get that information campaign out there, because I think there's still a lot of people out there that don't even know what PFAS is. So that campaign is going to focus on assessing your well, understanding that you have a well. First of all, understanding that if you've got a private well, that you do have it, it is your responsibility to make sure it's inspected, and then help people know what they can do for testing. And so that's going to be that's going to continue to be something we're working with DHHS on and getting that out the door. The other thing is, just as much as you guys can be part of our process, as you're getting out into the community and helping us spread the word about MPART and about PFAS, as much as you guys can get out there and be part of that voice out in the actual public, I think it's really important to be able to tell the story of what's going on behind the scenes and then share those links. So as we're setting up these meetings with Teresa, talking about her meeting down in Southwest Detroit, it would be really great to have that up as an opportunity, like for Dave's document and for other information on MPART and things that people can do to look at their wells and look at what potential testing they might need to do. If Southwest Detroit, hopefully there's not too many drinking water wells, but that's always a possibility. You never know where you're going to find one. So, Sandy? Except you're muted.
I almost went the whole time without that. Here's the one thing I'm a little worried about, I got to be honest, is this, people are resistant to testing their water because they're afraid it will affect their resale value of their home. And that's a real thing. And I know Patty Baldwin, I think, has brought up before the concern that it's not required that if your water is contaminated that you have to disclose that. I've had realtors call me themselves and ask me about that. So it's just one of those things that I think it's that onion we've got to unravel and figure out how are we going to encourage people to do that and then be responsible. Because if they find any of those, lead, heavy metals, any of that, it impacts their property values. And people are a little nervous about that. So think of that as you message it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, and I think, whenever there's fear, right, education's the best way to overcome fear. And, there's been studies talking about potential economic impacts in contaminated areas, and they just haven't seen that much. Especially in the latest housing market, there hasn't been really big impacts even in highly contaminated areas. So we've been able to see some of those things. But I think it's a good point, Sandy. There's always a fear of something. My fear is we give communities like Oscoda got a big chunk of money for hooking up drinking water across the cities, across the townships. And, in a lot of cases, we're not even getting 50% of the people to hook up. Even when they know they have contamination, we're still not getting 50% of the people to hook up. So I think that, again, goes back to education. We just got to do a better job with education of informing people, helping people to understand why it's so important to get hooked up in the areas that are impacted. So, Tony, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, unless I missed it, my impression had been that we went through the process of putting together the recommendations from the COG, which and then there was a general acceptance of those before the summer break, and I had thought that there was going to be an effort to kind of everybody roll up their sleeves and figure out how to specifically implement the recommendation that the COG had made. And again, unless I'm missing something, I'm not hearing that. We didn't talk about general education campaigns, and I'm all for those. But that came about as a result of a specific problem that came to light in Traverse City, but that resonated with things that had happened in Kent County and in Oscoda and in other places around the state. And I'm not seeing it. And I guess I'm really disappointed that after all this hard work, it's almost like, well, we've set out a general statement and now we'll move on to other things. And I'm just very, 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 very concerned that MPART's missing the boat here, and that our recommendation is not being implemented, and that there isn't a plan to implement it. I mean, I understand it may take time to do it, but I just don't see a plan at this point. And if I'm missing something, please correct me.
I think what we're recognizing is that just about everybody in the state is proximal to some source of PFAS. And that if we're going to really do this, it would include the whole state. I don't know how we get away from, it's not like we can draw a mile around every single site. There are sites all over the state when we really look at all the potential sources. And so I think it behooves us to make sure everybody knows about the potential issues with PFAS. And that's kind of what our focus is that we can't do this dot by dot by dot by dot across the state. We're at 228 sites, and, we're adding another 50 a year. So at that rate, we won't catch up with all the sites that we think we really do know about. But I hear you, Tony. I think it's a matter of balancing our abilities for the resources, along with, making sure we get the biggest bang for our buck with those resources that we have.
We don't have to go back and do the old sites though, right? We're just talking from this point forward, notifying people.
There's still a lot out there. We're working on looking at assessing, all our fire departments. You've got all of our wastewater treatment plants. So there would be a lot of work. So
essentially what we're hearing then is our recommendation is being rejected, because what we talked about was when an investigation begins, a notice should be given. And I'm not hearing that anymore. It sounds like that's been swept under the rug. And I got to tell you, I'm just like, I feel like we've been misled.
Hold on. Rick, are you still here? Rick Radisky? Are you around, Rick? Is he still on?
Yes.
Were you doing a meeting next week about this very issue?
Yes, we want to have a meeting at 6:30 on Tuesday to talk about revising our original notification of the public to include a timeline.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure people were aware that we have a way to work on this still, because I'm with you, Tony, on that. Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to notify people that have potentially contaminated wells, and to me it's more important than getting site data together. I think once there's some data that shows, I don't know if you can, if we want to, well, I think if there's a very serious potential issue out there, then you can move without the data. But I think once Eagle gets data that shows there's contamination in a particular area, the public should be notified within 1 to 2 weeks. And I think that's really important. And the toxicity is much greater for children, and it's greater for the fetus. And I think people would want to know that. And if you knew that, you would want to get clean water, and that whether you buy water or install your own filter. But I think there are people there that would like to know that, and they will use that in their own decision making. And just a matter of a month, a lot can happen. So I think the sooner we can get the people notified, the better. And I think, again, there may be some opportunities with the townships to notify people. They have with their tax records, all that's digitized, and they are able to give out notifications when there's new developments within a certain mile radius. That all has to be done within a matter of weeks. So I think they would be a resource too, and we want to talk about that in our meeting Tuesday. So.
All right. Boy, this has sparked a lot of discussion yet again. So, Stacy, is your hand up?
It is.
Okay. Go ahead, Stacy. I think you were next up. Okay, Mary, why don't you go?
As I'm sitting here listening to Abby say that now they're at the point of concluding that PFAS is everywhere, has any more been brought up? I realize this is an election cycle and that, but has anything been brought up about funding and an increase to the MPART staff?
There's some requests that we're looking at, but at this point I have not. There's additional funds that will be put into the remediation and redevelopment division. So they will have more site investigation cleanup funds. But MPART specifically doesn't get a budget. It's all worked through the divisions. And within the regular programs. And so, MPART, we still have 4 people, including myself, to do this work.
I understand that, and that's exactly my point. When you are looking at 230 sites and 50 additional each year, it just seems unrealistic that you're going to be able to maintain. And that's no reflection on you. It's no reflection on Kelly. It's no reflection on anybody involved with MPART. But it just seems unrealistic to consider that we're going to make much progress at this point if you're not expanding. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Joe.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This kind of follow up with what Tony was saying a couple of minutes ago. The background of what we recommended from the membership subcommittee earlier was really based on our feelings about the fish consumption advisories and the public notification. Examples where, our advice has gone only so far, and we'd like to see more progress in the coming weeks and months. So please look at the write-up we sent out earlier this afternoon, and let's see if there is a way that we can help everybody, all the stakeholders, in getting some results and some action that we'll be proud of and help more in the coming, months. So these are 2 key items: fish consumption advisories and public notification. We like to make more progress. So please read that carefully, and then let's talk about it next month or whenever we adopt that as an agenda item. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe. Daniel.
Yeah, a lot of good thoughts. I think there are a lot of parts of this that are worth discussing in greater detail, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole tonight. But I think the points Tony raised, I think, are fair. I think Rick, I think your comments were on target. Abby, when you were talking about the public education initiative and building that broad base of awareness, I think that is also really important. And I think that there's work going on already that's good. I think programs like the River Walkers are also good for doing those kind of things. But I think we have to do both, particularly around things that would require potentially an infrastructural or a lifestyle change amongst potentially impacted residents. That's at a different level than, sort of building that broad proactive level of awareness. If we're talking about disconnecting people potentially from wells and connecting them to municipal sources, or, installing filters in their homes or what have you, that rises to a different level of need for notification and awareness than I think a lot of the other things that we're discussing. But this is going to be a systemic problem that is only going to get more ingrained and deeply rooted and interwoven. So I don't want to downplay the need for that broad public education and awareness. And I think there are a lot of good models, a lot of good groups around the state that can help with that. So I think that's important. But in terms of what Mary raised, in terms of recommendations that we can make, I think Mary's onto it, that if there aren't enough Eagle staff or MPART staff to do these things that are necessary, then that seems like a pretty clear recommendation that we need to make, is that as the COG, MPART needs to be expanded, Eagle needs to be given more staff, more funding. That seems like a very clear need that the governor and others in the state legislature need to be aware of. So I think that's something that we should consider and take up. And one other thing I'll just say is, through the hexchrome spill and other things, notification on that was pretty quick, and it wasn't perfect, but it did demonstrate to me that at least notifying sort of key groups in an area, in sort of an emergency assessment, it can be done. And I feel like the players involved with that did a pretty good job. And I keep coming back to this model that, when there's a traffic accident or a major event along a highway, you can sign up for, the email alerts from MDOT. So like I'm constantly getting emails about traffic jams on 23 in Brighton because I signed up for it. And so the system is there, the website's there, the technology is sort of already established to do that, where if we just let people sign up by region or by county or however it would work, and whenever there's an event that kind of rises to this level, be it PFAS or hexchrome or what other heavy metal contamination, that rises to the level of a new site or a new investigation, the people that sign up for those emails could just be notified that, hey, there's this new site out there and the investigation is beginning. It uses basically established technology that, a state agency is already using. It's simple. It gets the word out quickly. It's not a perfect solution. It misses, people that don't have access to email and, their accessibility issues, but it does get us, I think, 80% of the way there to getting the word out quickly. So I just want to keep efforting at that, not to overlook sort of the solutions that other groups are already using for similar things. But I'll stop there.
No, that's a good idea. And we do have, if people sign up for our MPART updates, they are getting those weekly updates for new sites as well. So, but I do like that idea.
Lynn.
Okay. Just very quickly, I think Dan said what I was going to say. So it's just, we need both and. We need a larger education program, and we need to notify the public. We need to let people know so they can make the choice to protect themselves. And I I'm really glad you're going to meet in a couple weeks. Next week, Rick. I appreciate that. And I guess after hearing Mary speak and others, we've got to get more money. MPART needs a budget. You just can't be expected. You guys, we need to let the governor know that MPART needs a budget, period. It's just obvious, and we want to support. I just took a moment and I thanked oh my, Kelly for, look at all the work she does. She's incredible, and Abby, I know how hard you guys work. And so we want to support you. We don't want you to feel like you're always having to falling short. We want to say on behalf of you, you guys need a budget, and we need to make sure that other people know that. And it looks like Andy is on the call. Andy, we've said this before. I'm gonna say it again. It's not going to change. It needs to happen, period. So I'm off. That's it.
Thank you, Lynn. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I would not like to create any impression that I have any more influence over a single dollar in the state budget than anyone else on this call. So I hear you, and that message is reverberates up in the organization. And when we talk about requests that we can make, which people may or not listen to, things like engagement and work on groundwater are always part of the discussion. So your message is heard loud and clear. I just wanted to just sort of step back to where I thought we were in July, I don't think we've changed where we ended up in July. We had a smaller group come together. It included Dan and Mary and Rick and others. Aaron Keatley, our deputy director, put an email together sort of committing Eagle to sort of principles and working together and on a process and having the conversation that Rick is talking about. So I just wanted to chime in and say, I see us moving forward from that place we were in July and working out those issues. And maybe we should recirculate that sort of base set of principles we arrived at in July, because that's, summer's happened since then. And I think that's our launching point, and it's going to go into the topics that Rick and others have raised about who gets notified when and those types of situations. And of course, the resources are in the background. We can't do more than what's possible, but that conversation can be about what's the very best we can do with the resources we have, with the technology we have, as people have mentioned, getting the word out to the people who should hear about this. So I think we're 100% committed to that moving forward in that sort of spirit. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. All right, Tony.
Well, Andy, I appreciate your comments, and I'm changing a bit what I had planned to say, but I want to say this. I just don't see the email that was sent in July was a commitment. And what it appears to me has gone on is this has been swept to the bottom of the priority heap, to the point where if the COG doesn't do something, Eagle's not going to do anything. And we need to see leadership, and we're not seeing it. The credibility of Eagle with communities like mine has just taken another hit tonight. I want to be really clear about that, because you can say all kinds of things and you can make all kinds of commitments to all kinds of principles, but unless you act, unless you're committed to act, nothing's going to happen. And the credibility of the agency will continue to sink. I can't be more clear about it. And I don't understand why we sit around in the agency and wring our hands and talk about how hard it all is. We can't do this and we can't do that. We need leadership. If we have leadership, we can go to the legislature and say we have a problem and we need help. But if we're not going to address it, if we're going to hope it goes away, it's just going to get worse. And so I sincerely hope that the commitment that was made in July is resurrected and that action is taken and that it's given a priority, understanding that there are resources, there are limited resources available. Let's take a look at how we can fix it, but let's make a commitment, a real commitment, not just an email to shut this group up, which is how I'm feeling tonight, but a real commitment to make things happen. I'm going to say it again. Our community in Oscoda got horsed around by your predecessor agency for years. You're still in denial about it. So we need to see action. There are a lot of people here who are willing to work to do that, but we need to see action in the agency. That's all I've got to say.
So I would like to suggest we do a couple of things here, because I agree. I think there's either been a miscommunication. I don't know. If we could find the email that Aaron sent out to everybody about what the commitment was in July, I think that would be helpful for us to look at. Rick, you're going to take the group that's meeting on Tuesday, and I don't think Tony or I could be there because we're in Milwaukee at a thing, to start working on the public notification. I also just want to say that I think we get stuck on MPART has to do the notification, and I think that's kind of a straw man fight, because it doesn't mean MPART has to do it. It could come from the cities, it could come from the township, it could come from the health department. There's a lot of ways that we can do notification. So I think I'm not gonna listen to, we don't have it, just that. So how about if we start with that? I'd also like the membership committee to focus on that resolution, how we make recommendations and how we do those steps, because it sounds like that's also going to be a part of this. And then we can kind of move forward. So that's my stuff. Lynn and Tony, you still have your hands up. And now Rick has got his hands up. So Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that or to Kelly, when she circulates the memo from Aaron, to also circulate the engaging the public document that was put out. It's available on the website, but I think that's what started everything. And then we have the memo from Aaron, and we really need to put a timeline on there. So that's what we're going to be talking about on Tuesday night.
Yep, I can do that.
Thanks.
All right, we have a few more things in 10, 15 minutes. Abby, do you want to talk about the Menomonee Fire?
I would, because I think it's a great example of the work that MPART does do, and the work that we do try to notify the public, work with the public, and take actions every day to protect these citizens. So I'm a little taken aback that we're being accused of not trying to notify citizens. So there was a fire in Menomonee over the weekend. Menomonee, if you know, is on the Wisconsin border of Michigan, right on Lake Michigan, and a paper mill caught on fire this weekend, Friday, and it was the Resolute Paper Company caught on fire. The paper mill is here with their wastewater treatment plant, but there was several other facilities in the building. I think they all rented the building. And so when the fire happened, and I'll just show the video. When the fire happened this weekend, EPA, Eagle, DNR, Wisconsin, health departments, ATSDR, I mean, everybody was out. Very massive fire right on the Menomonee River. and all of the agencies responding. The paper products was a very large building filled with paper, recycled paper, and it is still burning. It is now 5 days later. It is still burning because there was so much product in there. They are not using AFFF on the fire, but unfortunately, the back end of the building had a company in there that was storing AFFF product, concentrate in the building, along with other chemicals and other things that we're not even sure exactly what all's in there. So there is a very large coordination of EPA, Eagle, DNR, all on site. We've probably got 5 of our staff, 10 of our staff up there, plus DHHS staff up there mobilized to address the situation. All the fire water's being contained, but we are finding some foam. They're seeing some foam that, has gotten into the lake because it is close to Lake Michigan there, but they're doing their best to try to contain everything. So air monitoring is going on. They're taking readings of particles. They're taking readings of all kinds of things. So we've taken surface water samples up and down the Menomonee River. We're taking samples of the water intake. But this is a pretty big deal. And this is the kind of stuff that, obviously we need. And MPART was, we were some of the first ones that got called. At first, I thought it was just a fire, and they weren't using AFFF. So they thought things were okay, but then later on they realized that this building had been had other stuff in it, and so this is one where, like I said, we're going up and down this river into this little outlet here, and then out into both the water supply for Marionette and Menomonee. So this is a pretty large action that you guys will probably see some additional press coverage on in the coming days, just because it's pretty darn large. I think there'll probably be some legal action against some of the companies in the building. No idea how the fire started yet, but it is a major response. When you get 5 on-scene coordinators from EPA to show up, and so we probably got 100 people up there right now flooding Menomonee, trying to get this thing under control and assess any potential public health impacts. So just wanted to get you guys up to date and keep you in the loop on that one. I don't have a lot of specifics yet. We're still evaluating what we think what they think was actually in the buildings. But we do know that the fire itself at the paper part of it could keep going for a couple more days. They're saying maybe by Friday they can get it out. So very hot, very much a testament to and this was all, volunteer fire departments. So I think we've called in everybody around the county. So we have been working on that all through the weekend, and have got staff up there. So our Mike Jury and myself have been working with their incident command system, trying to give them enough information to make sure we know that the methods they're going to use for testing will include the compounds we think that they're going to find, because that's important. Some of this is new generation AFFF, and so it's a little bit different than what we're finding in the past. So that was the last of my updates, but I'm assuming we've got a few hands that probably want to ask some more questions on that.
That's huge. That's quite a video there, let me tell you. And I've been to Menomonee. I don't think you've got 100 hotel rooms in there for your staff. So
they don't. I think that was the biggest thing, is nobody's got a place to sleep.
Right. Mary, you got your hand up?
Yeah, Sandy, either we could do it now or we could do it later. I just would like more clarification on what you would like the membership team to be doing.
Oh, you guys had done a good presentation. I think you said you had sent us an email with whatever the discussion was on, kind of the process for making recommendations. And I didn't see it in my email. So if you could just send that out to make sure everybody's got that. So when Rick's group is working on
Yes.
public notification, we have all that. That was all that
Yep.
was about.
I'd be happy to.
Tony.
Yes, Abby, thank you for that report. I'm hearing some reports and information that at least part of this site was used as a warehouse by Tyco, the foam manufacturer, and I just wonder if there's been an inventory and that AFFF may have been stored on this site, and I'm just wondering if you have any information about that, whether or not there's been an inventory taken of what was stored, in this facility.
As I understand it, they've given us as many MSDS sheets as they have. And so they're still trying. I mean, I think it's still too hot to go inside that end of the building, but yeah, that's correct. So we're still working. They're still in the fire response part of it. So everybody's trying to make the best accountability for the potentials for what we might find. But that's the case, is it was concentrate of AFFF, both fluorinated and non-fluorinated, as well as other things. And so we're looking, and you've seen those MSDS sheets, they don't exactly give you great information. So we're trying to do the best we can with the little bit of information we've got from Tyco. But Tyco has mobilized their own crews out on site. And so they've got, as well as Resolute Forest Products has got people on site as well. So trying to work together. The last thing I'll just mention here, this came up, I did not, comes out of our surface water quality assessment section. They're doing surface water quality monitoring, which they plan out 1 year to 2 years in advance. And so this is an opportunity for you guys, if you've got information that you want to make a request for monitoring to be done in a particular area of the state. They go through and do, 5-year plans. So this is something that came up. There was a listserv note that went out, press release type of note. Well, it wasn't a press release. It was just an email blast that went out on this. But I wanted to highlight it again because, we've got a great representation from across the state. If you guys have ideas or thoughts on specific locations that should be monitored, this is your opportunity to jump in and provide that input before October 30th. So this is in the slide deck, and we've got, and we can probably throw it in, doesn't look like, Kelly, I don't know if you can take it off the PowerPoint and make it a live link, but we can put the links in in an email to you guys.
You can take it off the PowerPoint. It is a live hyperlink in the PowerPoint that I sent in the PDF.
Perfect. Okay, that's even easier.
Dave Wynn, you got your hand up.
Yeah, Abby, I do have one question. I looked at the 5-year watershed map and I looked at the information. Do you have any idea as to how the priorities were put together for that 5-year map? Was it certain criteria? And if so, what would that criteria be?
I would have to ask staff. I don't know.
Okay.
I have not, that is not something I'm familiar with. Do we have any water resource staff on that could answer that? I will have to get back to you because I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, I'm asking that question because when we fill out this request form, it'd be sure nice to know what the criteria is for being able to, so that, we make sure that we put the request in properly.
If you want to shoot me an email, I will make sure it gets to the right person. Bill, you want to help us with that? Because you might have some experience with this.
Cox. If Kevin Cox is still on, he could answer that too.
Yeah, this is Bill Creel. I can tell you. We set that up originally so we could rotate every 5 years across the whole state. And we did it so by the district boundaries at the time also. So you were doing about 20% of each district around the state. So you rotate through every 5 years, and those are your priority water bodies. That's the only criteria there is just a rotation strictly around the whole state. So your watershed will come up every 5 years as a priority for monitoring.
So it wasn't necessarily then based on whether there was PFAS, whether there was a great amount of contamination, or how much testing has been done, yada, yada, yada.
No, but you can suggest monitoring anywhere. You're not limited to those basins. You can make a suggestion for anywhere. Those are the priorities for the monitoring though. And, given resources, they may or may not get to everything.
Kevin, were you going to jump in too?
Yes, this is Kevin Cox again at Eagle. So as was noted, we do rotate those watersheds, on a 5-year basis. But for targeting monitoring requests, we do want to kind of take a weight of evidence approach when we get requests coming in. Does that area have a history of PFAS contamination? Do we have fish data for that location? Are we seeing fish in that location? So maybe we want to go out and check that water there. So there's kind of a lot of factors we weigh into in terms of which targeted monitoring requests we're actually going to pursue. Unfortunately, with a lot of things, budget is limited, right? And so, we can't necessarily accept all of the targeted monitoring requests. So we try to be as judicious as we can and really hone in on ones that we think might have, might be problematic.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Abby, I just want to make sure Mary brought up the question of our next meeting, because our next COG meeting is election night, and we want to make sure everybody gets out to vote. So I think the question is, what do we do? Do we bump it a week? Do we bump it a month? What do people want to do? Teresa, what do you got?
Well, in light of the holidays coming in November, and I will be working election day at the polls. Maybe we can bump it. Maybe we can bump it a week, and then get it out of the way before the holidays, so we won't be, being in the holiday mood and festivities with family and the meeting be happening. We wouldn't want that to happen. A lot of people would miss, so I suggest bumping it a week.
Are you saying we're not a cheerful, happy meeting to be at the holidays? I kind of agree though. I like that idea. What do you guys think? How many people do we really want to do a vote, or how many people are okay with bumping it a week? So that would make it, anybody got a calendar? What would be the next Tuesday?
Deer season.
The Michigan State holiday.
Oh, it's
Deer
opening a deer season. Oh, we can't have a meeting then.
Yes, we can.
What about if we do it the week before? I mean, I'm all for momentum.
Oh no, you got a point there. The week before.
5 weeks. 5 weeks is like, okay, well, it's just enough time to kind of lose,
Yeah. So November 1st, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just a thought, or
Yeah.
the next day, or the Wednesday. Maybe that's too crazy to do the day after on Wednesday the 9th or Monday the 7th.
Kelly or something. What? So
I was going to suggest either do it on Tuesday, November 1st. So that would be a 3-week rather than a 5-week gap, or do it on that Monday and Wednesday close up to the 8th. That's all. Just a suggestion.
All right.
Can I just
Teresa?
say, I'm out,
Yes.
I'm out at a conference the whole week of the 7th. So if we could move it the week before or the week after, if you want me. Otherwise, you can have a meeting without me. I'm good.
Come on. Come on, we're making progress here. You don't need to get out of it. Okay, so how many people want to do it the week of the 1st? I don't know the best way to do this. Can we send out a doodle poll or something?
Yeah, because I'm full the first on that November 1st. I'm full. So I don't want to miss any meetings. The meetings have really become very interesting. So.
Yeah. Kelly, is it possible for you guys to do a doodle poll to everybody?
Yep, I can do a doodle poll. I can.
I mean,
send
I
it
don't know
out.
how many are dedicated deer hunters that have to be out there opening day, but I know it's important. I mean,
I can send it
my
out
dad never
tomorrow.
did know my birthday because it was around deer season, so, you know. All right,
So
so
what
Kelly
I
will send out
heard-
a doodle poll.
What I heard was November 1st, the 7th, the 9th, or the 15th.
Somebody said the 14th, Monday, the 14th.
Okay. Okay, yep, I'll send that out. Probably won't see it until tomorrow.
Yes, I think that's fair. All right.
And then I'll give like a week for people to respond, and then we'll go with majority.
That sound fair to people? Everybody's nodding that I see. All right, that's what we'll do. Okay, we got it done with 1 minute over. See, we could do this. All right, so stay tuned for the next meeting then. All right,
Bye.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Abby, thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Lynn.
Mhm.
See you later.